Hi, my name is Lito Arkangel. Raised as a child in the small plantation town of Kia'ao, previously known as Ola'a. And I grew up mostly in Hilo side, in Keaukaha, and Hilo, basically. It's just with family and playing, and my uncles would come over. My grandfather's house in Kel. My grandfather, believe it or not, we had a big family. Archangels was prominent in Kel. A lot of people would come over to my grandfather's house, and they would always have get-togethers and parties, and I would have Hawaiian uncles and local uncles, and everybody would come play music, and I would just sit in and listen. And another source was from church, so I was so at the beginning of church. They also gave me the kuleana of sitting next to my grandmother and turning the page, because they know if they turn their back, I'm gone. I'm gonna go Akiyama store down the road. I'm gonna tell my grandma, hey, I gotta make doo-doo. Okay, go, and I'm gone. So they caught on. Eventually I got caught, and then they just gave me more jobs to do. So when I'm turning the pages, right behind me is the choir, and all these kupuna is in the choir. And a lot of the songs we did was Hawaiian songs and a couple Filipino songs, and then your standard traditional Christian hymns. I was being forced to sit there. I was also retaining all of this information. Like, for example, how the choir was arranged. Yeah, you get alto, soprano, the falsetto singers, the tenors. And so it kind of unfolded in my brain. I could easily understand what was going on. My grandmother was steady at least 2 times a week, and that was my parents' opportunity to take a break from us, so we had to go to church with my grandma. So that's the pretty much the origin of where I heard Hawaiian music, how it began to build in my life. When I was 9 or 10, a plantation shut down, and it caused a lot of stress for the ohana. Financial stress. They argue with each other because they don't know what to do. So my parents was one of those. And when your parents fight in front of the kids, the stress rubs off. And so I went to school. I'm the type of guy, I wear my heart on my sleeve. So you can tell if I come school upset or sad. You can tell. And so the kumus that I had at school were very beneficial towards pointing me in the right direction in regards to music. But not for the purpose of having it my passion, but for the purpose of it being some sort of self-therapy to help me at least make it to the next day. I had kumus. One of my kumus was my auntie, Connie Camarillo. She was kind of like one kahuna, and she would tell us, that's where I learned a lot of Hawaiian culture, was from her. And one particular song she shared with me was a song that she thought would help me reset. Her and this other kumu, who was a great baseball coach, an awesome teacher, his name was Mr. Zukaran. He was from Lapuaihoi. He knew my family from Lapuaihoi. And he saw the potential in me. Both of them did. So they knew I was kind of distraught, and they tried to focus. He focused me on ukulele, and Auntie Connie focused me on singing. But back then, my auntie was like, you should sing more falsetto, you sound so good. But back then, this is what, in the early 80s, I was like, oh, I don't like nobody beat me up and they think I'm mahu or something. And I was so aware, I didn't want people thinking that, so I refused. And then eventually I did, because they had told me that, if you be yourself, you're gonna be well loved. You're a good person, but you have to learn to be yourself. And after that, it was up to me uh, to receive that and accept that. So it took a while, but those were the two main influences. And Mr. Peralta, Ray Peralta, these are all prominent musicians. My auntie Connie passed away, but her legacy lives on to her children, and to her grandchildren. And is the my favorite singers of old Hawaii is probably the ones that will give me plenty scolding, because you can hear it in their tone. I know they're kumus like Lina Machado, Maddie Lamb, Kauhanu Lake Trio, Johnny Almeida, all these guys. They were the innovators. Jimmy Kaholokula. They helped to modernize Hawaiian music through whatever venue they could. It was radio back then, phonograph or whatever. Lina Machado, I totally appreciate, because she would just go on tour all the places of Hawaii, and she would write music. And if you read her book about her, she's very particular, and she writes composition. And if you don't do one of her songs exactly how she wrote them, she will come up to you and ask you, "How come you did them like that? Is that how you read it on the book?" And you read it word for word. That's how people would get nukud by her, because she made it this way. That's how you should sing it. I love to do Lina Machado songs, but every time I sing them, I say Kalamayapu, because I know I'm not going to be exactly how I do it. But for me as a musician, I feel like when I do those songs, I get, I hope now those mele the way they like them. But then when you start to just repetitively do it over and over, your amo comes out in it regardless. And so through the years, as I've practiced those songs and studied, I feel a little bit more pono about doing those songs. The modern day would be like, in the late modern day, like Dennis Kamakahi, Dennis Paval, Gary Haleamau. But to this day, only one name stand out in my eyes, and that's Kainani. To me, Kainani is comparable to those in the past. And she, to me, exemplifies perpetuating that poetry in the music. Yeah. And that's the reason. Her music is the reason why I'm sitting in and I hope now Puka Maika Olala Hawaii, because I want to be able to be fluent in what she's doing now, which is, to me, a long ways. I have a long ways to go. I think very few modern Hawaiian musicians tend to, well, I hardly listen to the radio now, so I cannot say it's an ultimate conclusion. But from what I do hear, as I'm learning Hawaiian, and I'm getting better at just naturally just understanding, just not even having to think about processing what they're saying. There's not as much kauna poetry. It's like pepeke, valeno. It's all I hear. Oh, that was a kia pepeke. Oh, that was a kalele kulana. But I don't hear the poetry in it. And for me, I'm an artist where I can write good English songs. In fact, my English perspective is closer to Hawaiian perspective in regards to songwriting. And with Hawaiian, I've always understood it because it's in poetic format. Like Olelo Noyao and whatnot. And to me, when I listen to Kekahi's music, Kainani's music, it's full of that. It kind of fills the room with that type of poetry. For me now, I like to, with what resources I have attained and knowledge that I've gained, I like to get poetry from people who write good Hawaiian poetry, and then you say you quit and you take a break for a couple of days, and then next thing you know, you start getting withdrawals and looking for your ukulele. That's a definite sign that you have a passion. But you need to learn to engage the students and engage people, regardless if it's students or just people, entertainment or education. You have to engage them both. And you have to have a passion for teaching as well, and sharing with the crowd. That allows you to make sure that all the music you're doing is pololei. Because if it's not, then you're sending the wrong message. And that's big, heavy. Like, Kumu, I always pick at the Kumus, pick on their minds, and I plan to pick on all of these Kumus' minds because I find them as a very valuable resource. And I started with Kumulale because I did a lot of songs that he is well known. He knows the song. He knows the people that wrote them. And, you know, I need that feedback. Regardless if it's negative or positive, it's a must. And, you know, I just go from there. Well, back then, yeah, in the early 80s, you know, like how I said, and you know, I took it serious because back then, you know, to be Mahu was not something that you wanted to share because it was old-fashioned stuff. And for me, I guess the stereotype or whatever, I just never like rebranded that because I was just, you know, self-centered. I was a little kid, you know. I knew I could hit the high. Only when I reached high school, when I could sing the Popolo songs, and I could riff like them, and I could sing high, and whatever. So then people started like, oh, I get good feedback on that. So I would just sing more in falsetto from that point. It was just because the feedback. But when I was younger, I would rather just play just fun kind of songs rather than try to show off my high voice, you know. Because back then it felt weird. But then I got teenagers and plenty of Mahus around, and then a lot of my friends was Mahus, and I never judged them differently. I thought they were talented. I thought they were awesome, you know, and I felt more comfortable being able to do what I do because they didn't look at me differently either, and that made me feel good. So I just dove right in and said, I can do this.
Mahalo ya oi.
Mahalo.